Hello, and welcome to another episode of Life of the Lost. I'm Sam,
And I'm Megan.
and on this week's episode,
We're talking about behavioral issues and I was going to say emotional damage.
yeah,
Well, yeah, emotional
from
issues.
adoptees.
hmm
Um,
So you're looking at this site, and it is from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And the first thing that it says is children who are adopted may have behavioral issues such as violent tantrums. That's the first one.
yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Had a lot of times where I was really emotional and I didn't know how to express it, and I just was so angry and frustrated all the time. And when I was a few years old, even as far back as I can remember, I would bang my head on the floor because I just couldn't explain my feelings. And it was rough.
Do you know what your mom tried to help you with?
She tried to soothe me by hugging me and telling me everything's okay, and asking me what was wrong, but I just couldn't really explain myself. And it was really intense and traumatic experience, definitely.
So that was when you said a few years old?
Yeah.
Did that go into later in life?
Yeah. Different ways of expressing my feelings. I kind of withdrew a little, and then it imploded when I was a teenager. I was just acting out and being depressed, struggled with sadness and anger. But that was kind of into the acting out part. How about you? Did you struggle with any of those?
I think when I was just more of a teenager, it was, I guess, the violent outbursts were me like punching walls or kneeing cabinets or doors, slamming doors, breaking things, punching glass. So counterintuitive. But I think that was mostly the lashing out, and I still kind of feel like the need to do that sometimes, but lifting weights has been helping a lot. Like just putting aggression towards something like that, or it helps a bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely argue against not doing that,
Against not,
being destructive.
ah,
I think as a creator, you need those moments. Those are moments of growth when you're so angry you just want to break something. I think there was a time once where I was just so angry I smashed my guitar on the floor.
Jesus.
But it made me feel better because I capitalized on my anger.
But what about like the aftermath? Because then you don't have a guitar,
But
or does
that's
that matter?
I realized that I had multiple guitars at that point.
You
So
thought about it before you did it.
yeah.
I guess with breaking things is another thing. It's when you're in a house, I feel like too, like I was in a house, I could do that. I feel like I can't break things. I mean, I could, but other people live around here, like when you're in an apartment, I guess. And another thing is, I always want to punch things sometimes, but I'm like, I could only punch with my left hand. I just saw this really funny TikTok the other day, and it was like a construction worker or something, and he was getting really pissed off, and so he had a hammer in his right hand. He's about to throw it, and then his friend said, "No, left-handed anger," and so he takes his left hand and he just tosses it like, it's obviously not his strong hand, and I was just thinking about that because as much as I want to punch something, I feel like that's my right hand is my money maker. Like it helps me design. It's the only hand I use, or my dominant hand, I guess. So that stops me every time.
Yeah, I think mine is never really destructive like that. But in terms of using my body as a means to, hurt,
Yeah.
I definitely would take something heavy, like perfect example, this,
Mm.
and kind of throw it on the wall or something.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I would do things kind of more stupid, like the example that you were given, which is then you don't have that thing anymore.
Yeah.
So I would do that sometimes with video games, like a controller.
Mm.
I would fling it across the thing, the the room, and it would just break on the wall. But I think one of the reasons why I did that with that was because it wasn't working, and so I just threw it.
It reminds me of that time where I was in New York and I had called you, and for some reason our cell phones weren't like connecting very well. And it was on your, yeah, it was cell phone to cell phone, and you chucked your phone and you broke it. And then you called me off your home phone.
Yeah, yeah, it's a perfect example. Um, but I definitely, what's funny about that when I think about it, there are such few times that I actually regretted it that I honestly don't even remember.
Mm.
And the times that I did feel badly, per se, it was, for instance, maybe that phone example.
Mm.
I can distinctly remember the only thought in my mind was, guess you don't have a phone now. It wasn't like, stupid, stupid, stupid. How could I do that? Not like
Yeah.
that. It was just like, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Do you feel better? Yeah, I kind of do. So that's kind of the
Moral.
moral is I'm definitely an advocate of that, because I feel like there's a few times where I did that, and because I would get so angry. Actually, more specifically, to go back to your point about you taking it out on kind of yourself by punching something,
Mm.
I would punch my hand, because
Like just like this?
I would put my hand on my fist, on my leg, and I would just
No
punch
way.
it like that, because I was upset at my fingers for not stretching hard, felt wide enough, because I was playing guitar. And that's, I was like, stupid. But that was in my high school days. But then and then right after then, I would say, you feel that? Good. Again. Let's go. And I'd go back to my guitar
And did that make it any
write it.
better?
It did. I felt more validated.
Huh.
Like I was very hard on myself.
Yeah.
I was like, you
Self-discipline.
stupid fuck. You
Oh,
can do
Jesus.
fucking better. You can do fucking better. That's how I think to myself.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, yeah, you're right. Fuck, I can. So fucking do it. Fine, I will. Let's go. Let's go. And then I would sit there for like 5 more hours and just doodle with the shit.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it works, it works.
Yeah, so I guess I've never had that
Like regret
self-destructive regret of being hard on myself and then making me actually depressed because I'm hard on myself. It's definitely like the Mamba mentality, how Tom Brady is, how Mike Tyson is, how David Goggins is, where you get angry, but it just makes you work harder. It's not, it doesn't burn you out.
Yeah. Or you like self-loathe after it.
Yeah, where you're just, I hate myself. I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough. It's more like, I'm going to show them I'm going to be the best. I hope that they think that I'm not going to be the best because I'm going to be the best,
Yeah.
That's how it feels when I hate on myself.
Yeah.
It's weird.
No, I think
it's contradicting.
that's a good way though.
Yeah.
If there has to be a way, that's a good one. Because I think when I would hit something, it was so stupid because I remember one of the last things I hit, was a glass pane. It was a rectangle, it was glass, and I had created it in college, and it was really beautiful. It was these 3 illustrations, and I painted behind it, and I remember it was probably one of my favorite pieces ever, but I was just so angry that I broke it, and obviously it came with so much regret afterwards. Like, I obviously still remember it, and I didn't feel good about it at all. Like, not even in the moment. It's just, like, I can't remember not regretting every time I punched a hole in the wall or need something. I need my mom's cupboard, and every time I come home, I still see that mark. It's still like a reflection because it didn't completely go through, but it made this giant, I don't know, mark, kind of indent. So you can see it when the sun hits it perfectly, and it's just like, damn, why did I do that? It's not even mine. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's uh, trying to find the words to describe it. I'm going for a computer term. It's a different way of processing. Your mind is
It was never to
very
like,
different.
but it was never to, going back to what you just said about how you're able to take that thought and, so here's the thought, it's going this way, and it's like, I'm angry, but I'm going to turn right and do kind of like the right thing, or push it into something that helps me move forward, where I would feel the anger, but I'd go left being not in a good way. I wasn't able to take that emotion and turn it into anything good, because then I just sat in self-loathing, and I could not get out of that feeling until I was somehow talked out of it. But I never got myself out of it. It was my mom coming in or my dad coming in. My mom would sit with me for hours trying to talk through it, and I would just be so angry. And I would get so angry at her until I hurt her, like emotionally, and like
Jesus.
watched her cry, and then I felt better. How sick is that? And then if my dad got upset, he would scream at me and he'd make me feel like shit. But I would be able to justify why he's a piece of shit, in my head when I was a kid. Therefore, that emotion, that negative emotion, still was negative, but it went to other places that just created this negativity, this justification within the negativity, like, I'm this way because of this or because of that. It was never, and it just never got put into the right places.
Yeah, it's just hearing you talk about that gives me huge anxiety, in the sense of just seeing somebody live inside of a box of their mind. It's no disrespect to you at
No,
all. I
it's
just
horrible.
thinking about not being able to get out of something, feeling is just very on your own. Is just very, very scary.
But that's where the shitty thing from that comes from. There's no self-validation in anything. It's getting validation from other people all the time. And if you don't get that, then you don't feel good enough.
What do you mean?
It leads to where you don't even think you're good enough for anything, and you can't talk yourself into being like, "Oh no, I'm great. I'm good."
But that's
Or,
really interesting, because if you're talking about validation, I never got the validation that I received from my mom about the things that I loved.
but you were able to, don't you think you were able to kind of like find that internally though? You were able to kind of like hype yourself up in a certain way. You didn't rely on her validation to do those things, or did you?
But I did,
Ah,
because her validation was the one thing that I drove me. Her non-validating me the things I viewed as life made me angry and pursued it even harder. Which is interesting, because it's the same thing with you, but you didn't, per se, as proactive as maybe someone like me,
yeah.
which is interesting. I mean, I don't have a I don't have a answer for that. It's just different, unique. I don't know, parallel. You know,
Yeah. I guess it just, looking back at it, it wasn't proactive at all. It wasn't productive. There wasn't anything that came from it other than knowing how to now kind of turn a different, knowing how to approach things differently when it comes to Maya. I guess that's how I'm able to make myself feel like I can use these things for the better, because it is really sad, it is really depressing, it is really anxiety ridden looking back, knowing that I was trapping myself, knowing that I didn't have any kind
well,
of keys out.
and here's the thing too, that I'm gonna maybe, now that you're talking about it, And I don't have I don't have anything else than past experience and a freaking hunch. Where when I say I'm going to take a step back with structure with her in the sense of discipline. I'm going to tell her things that she should do, and I'm going to really be meaningful, and I'm going to be truthful. But by no means am I going to crack down on her the way that I have done and the way that my mom didn't do. Yeah. Because I feel as though the one thing that I loved about my mom is that she did tell me these things.
What would be an example?
I don't, I was brushing my teeth. When I was a kid, I didn't brush my teeth as much as I should have, and I got a ton of cavities. And she would always say, you know, you should brush your teeth. And I never really would. She wouldn't ever say, well, if you don't brush your teeth, you know, you're seriously going to get in trouble. Like, you know, like I didn't feel that animosity. It was just like, Sam, you really should brush your teeth. Really.
But it's not like you didn't, though. She would just make it more convenient for you. Like you said, she would bring over like
Oh, yeah.
a thing for you to spit
That
in
was
and water.
sometimes. So it wasn't as often as maybe it's talked about,
Yeah.
but it was.
I guess she
She
kind
worked
of
with
fought
me.
her own battles in that kind of way where she was like, okay, well, I'm not. She obviously knows that you kind of have, at the time when you were a kid, you were a little bit more rebellious to things. So if she can make it a little bit easier, how can she do that? And by helping you kind of do that. But what made you brush your teeth then?
Not wanting to go to the dentist anymore. And learning from my consequences instead of somebody telling me this is what's going to happen. There's not a better teacher than experience, which is kind of why I think sometimes I notice I don't say anything, you know, for the sake of the dynamic, but I notice that sometimes you can control a little bit for your own benefit in terms of structure wise. Understandable.
Like with the teeth,
100.
I tell
No,
her
meaning
like
meaning if you don't go to sleep,
Oh.
it's going to be harder for you in the morning, per se, as well as it will be for her. But it's a mutual understanding, which is what creates the need of structure, which is totally understandable.
Yeah.
But my mom, just going back to me growing up and my mom saying you should get some sleep because you're going to have to wake up in the morning early. For some reason, I felt as though I listened to her, but I didn't at the same time. And whether or not I was tired or not, I still ended up getting up and going. And to think about what if we weren't as hard on her for some things and things still ended up getting done.
Mm.
You know, what if she was
Yeah.
able to say, I don't know,
I get
I don't
worried
wanna
about
go to sleep.
with
Okay.
that example, I get worried about her not being able to focus or learn in class too.
No,
Like,
your
it's
reasoning
shitty.
isn't as simple as I'm making it.
Yeah, and I
But
think
yeah.
like it's like a battle always. Like not always like the
Well,
amount of time,
it's
but
always
it's a battle with which direction you go, such as going back to the teeth thing. When I was younger, I was always told I had a hard time with brushing teeth too. I just didn't want to
I
do
prefer
it.
like not battle, more like a complex path making decision. Because I feel battle is like a fight. It's not really a fight per se. It's about how can we give and take. It's a very specific, complex formula of give and takes. We're using what you're about to use is
Yeah.
the toothbrush example. Like, how
Yeah.
can I let her know the consequences? Maybe do a little better than my mom and dad with me,
Right.
but also something different that I've never experienced because she never grew up the way I did,
Yeah.
which is something I don't even know.
It's just an experiment. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
You're just flying blindly here into the wind and hoping that it takes. And yeah.
Yeah. So I guess like for her, sometimes like sometimes I feel like maybe we can morph into a more dynamic, upgraded version of how we do things here, knowing that she gets possibly more discipline than she'll ever get here somewhere else
Yeah.
half of her life. And knowing that as mature, understandable, growing people, how can we give her the opposite? Even if we don't necessarily want to at certain times, how can we be a good cop if there's a bad cop? We can't both be bad cops.
Yeah.
We gotta balance it out. And for the sake of, like we were just talking about earlier, with the or the pre, so we had tried to do this podcast once prior, but we had some technical difficulties. But we were talking about a topic, I guess, that we will talk about in a little bit, which is, what was that?
Sensory?
No, the other one.
Violent tantrums?
No, the third one.
Oppositional behaviors.
Yes, to think more like oppositional behaviors where her mom is doing one thing, so we need to do the other. We can't both be doing the same thing because it doesn't work for her. And
Right.
who are we, and what are we trying to do? What's the goal?
Yeah.
When you ask yourself what kind of person you want to be, how do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered as the simple-minded person who's kind of all in their feelings and only thinks kind of selfishly for them?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want to think of, that, like with the kids on the swing that we talked about last podcast,
Mm-hmm.
with their limitations and their perception of the world is smaller than yours, and you can see outside their box, but it is not a view that you can explain to them the way that you see it, because you'll offend them and you'll come off being arrogant, and you don't want to be perceived as a mean person. And that is a pretty mean thing to do. Unfortunately, even if it is the truth, it still is hurtful to somebody else saying that. But to take that internally and to say, okay, well, if they are going to be this person to to this child, how can I fill in the gaps, knowing that I have the responsibility of seeing bigger than them, can seeing more emotionally solid than they are, and can see into the future a little bit based on how things are progressing now, based on your past experiences and your self-reflection on yourself and who you are and the growth that you've made. How can we change this? How can we work with what we got, with what the cards are dealt,
Yeah.
for better, for worse, for your own interests at times.
Yeah, because I think it's so much easier to just say, which is just something interesting that's been happening lately. I'll ask Maya, while we're on the topic of brushing teeth or, cleaning room, she'll be like, no, I'm not gonna. And I used to get so upset, and I'd just look at her and give her a look. But the last time she said it was the last time she was here. I think it was this weekend, and this past weekend. She's like, no, Annie. I said, no, I'm not going to. But she was kind of like smiling about it. And I just went to the bathroom and kind of shut the door. I had to go to the bathroom anyways, but I was like, I'm just trying to calm myself down, because that is so in my head. And in that moment, I'm thinking that is so disrespectful. But I'm also just trying to kind of pick up where I feel, and I could be wrong, I feel like her mom doesn't let her have that control in that sense. And so I know Maya's trying to push my buttons because she knows me. And I know before that's bothered me. So I'm trying to show her also that I'm not going to get angry because I also don't want to have fear control her behavior based on my anger. So I just let it go. And when I came outside, I didn't say anything and she was cleaning up her room. And it's so hard to bite my tongue when I feel like I want to just be super snappy and just say, like, what did you say to me? You know? But I'm getting there. It was like the other day too when in New York City, there's always scaffolding. She loves to jump up on the scaffolding and hang and go crazy and sit up there, and I don't like that. I get so scared she's gonna fall and bang her head or something. And I used to tell her, like, please don't do that. Like, don't do that. I don't want to see you doing that. And now I bite like my inner cheeks and I'm just letting her do that. And if she falls, then she falls and learns, hoping and praying that nothing bad happens, but just letting that happen. Or one time she was putting stickers on a parking meter. We went to Trader Joe's and she had this whole roll of stickers. And she was looking at me, seeing if I was going to get mad or something. And I felt like she knew I was getting angry. And I was getting angry because for one, I didn't want her to get in trouble, for somebody to say something. And for two, I was like, God, just don't do that. Just don't do that. Like, you know better. But then I just sat there and I just smiled at her and I just looked the other way and then looked down at my phone and I looked back up and she's taking them off. So it's kind of a scary thing of also trusting, because in all of those moments, not only am I trying to take, pieces of thoughts from you and try to enter those into my brain and try to keep calm in those situations, but I have to learn to just trust that she's not an idiot. Like, she knows. So, yeah, that's, I guess, my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's interesting, how you don't like being controlled, and she doesn't either. And how you'd find it disrespectful that somebody says no to you. You find it so convicting when you say no to somebody else when they're trying to control you.
Which goes into another point was oppositional behaviors. Yeah, I guess I felt when I was a kid so justified in saying no so fast, where I didn't even know what I was saying no to. If you were telling me to not do something, like, it just makes me want to do it. It's just this craving of, like, I'm going to do it now.
Yeah, it's...
Toxic.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't... No, I guess... I always felt like any decision or any kind of topic I had on a subject, I always agreed with because I felt like agreeing with it. Then the majority agrees with it.
You wanted to have the opinion, like, of the underdog?
But it wasn't intentional, which is so interesting.
You kind of just gravitated towards that?
Yeah. Because I remember when I was... I'm just trying to think of any topics that I did, like...
Did you thrive off of conflict at all when you were a kid? Or growing up at all?
Maybe. But in my own way. The only times that I could think having like different opinions than somebody else is I remember when I was a teenager, I kind of brought up to the table at a dinner once with my family about joining the army. I want to join the Marines, and but there were such big anti-war people at the table there saying, "Why would you? Oh, how could you do that?" And in my mind, I don't know, because I think that what they do is pretty cool. And growing up, I've watched war movies and action movies, and I so desperately wanted to dress like these guys, and obviously these guys mimic the actual real life Marines and special forces dudes. So that's what I enjoyed about it. Um,
Leaving that table, though, did you feel like you still wanted to do it, or do you feel like you were talked out of it?
um, I still wanted to do it until I realized that it would interfere with another passion of mine. So it wasn't like, oh, because they said it, I'm gonna do it or I'm not gonna do it.
Ah,
It was so it's interesting because I guess I'm very much too on what works best for me. I guess another example would be, I don't know, political affiliations. But if you break those specific things down on why I believe what I believe, these ideas matter to me.
yeah, I
But
suppose.
you would you would fight a fight that you never even had conviction towards. You just disagreed with them because they
Just
didn't
because they
pick
had an
that
opinion
side,
that wasn't mine.
or just any opinion that wasn't. Yeah, yeah, which is interesting because therefore how could I'm trying to, I guess what I was trying to bring up before is that any topic that I felt I could fight, I knew I could fight
Hmm.
because I had facts behind it, because I already felt certain ways about it, which is why I'm going to say what I'm going to say, not in the sense of so blankly I'm just going to interject into why I believe there's no God, because why? I don't know, because he doesn't exist, you know?
Hmm.
Or you know, like the topic I was bringing up about, World War II and Nazi Germany and doing all these, investigations into these relics that were very myths and fairy tales of the past, like looking into Atlantis, like looking into the Spear of Destiny, the spear that apparently pierced Jesus Christ's chest, the first one, and got lost in throughout time. So things like that, having those,
Facts
yeah,
behind it.
or a sense of knowledge, and it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be facts, but to know where you stand and to
And to
be
be
able to
able to
present it.
debate it and
Yeah.
present, yeah.
So, because I guess, but that also goes into who I was as a person too, and who I still am, which is somebody who isn't just blindly just interject himself into a room.
Hmm.
I wait by the back. I study. I see who I like. I hear conversations. I see where I can speak up and get involved, and I see where I can't. But
Hmm.
before I get involved, I get a, it's like
You
foreplay.
scope it out.
I get a, let me get a little taste. Let me see what I'm working with here. Let me see the intelligence level. Like
Yeah.
what kind of talk are we having? We
Hmm.
having like, oh, what's the Sunday weather like, or what I love crocheting, or I don't know, or are we talking about, you know deep philosophical questions on how you break down the ideas of God, or of parenting styles. What do you make of the political spectrum in Europe right now? I
Right.
don't know, stuff like that. Um, how do you EQ a fucking, if you're talking anything music, okay, whoa, cool, I like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if they're talking about household or wood craftsmanship, I don't know a thing. I'm gonna sit back and let this conversation rock
Yeah.
until I can find an analogy or comparison somewhere, and
Yeah.
I can put that in and show that
That
I
you have somewhat of knowledge behind it.
or yeah, or that I can be involved even with that. And so I don't know, but
The next one is sensory issues and times of either stress or excitement.
yeah, I feel like, as a lot of people know, that I'm very oil phobic. I hate oil. I
Is
always
there a
have.
name for that actually?
That's interesting. You should look that up.
Fear of oil. Lipophobia?
No way.
No, 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 no. That's like lipophobia is a fear of fats, triggered after knowing fats can cause fear of oil. E Eliophobia is the fear of oil or grease,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the person. Wait, I don't know how to say it. Elaiop phobia.
I don't know.
Eliophobia.
What does it say though? Say
Oh, I just said it. Is the fear of oil or grease.
nothing else.
I mean, it says it's here. Depending on the person, the phobia can be linked to lipophobia, which is the fear of fats. But they have a picture of
When you say
oil.
fats,
They have a picture of literal oil. But yours is more like personal oil, not
so
cooking
it's
oil. But
grease.
you
Let's
also
just say
don't like
grease.
grease too.
Let's just say grease, because
Okay.
grease is a form of oil.
Fear of grease. Grease. What is the fear of grease? That it comes up that touching oily things, including food or with one's hands, is called myromecophobia. What is your height? Oh.
I wonder how I'd feel if I met somebody else with that.
Trust me, I have it, and it's so discomforting. The thought of oil on my hair scares the shit out of me. It sounds like OCD,
Yeah, it is.
a fear of contamination from these things. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like the fear of being you don't you don't like being touched. Like you hate when Maya has greasy hands after pizza, and she knows this, so then she'll try to come up to you and she'll be like, "Dad," and she'll put her hands in your face, but we all know she's not going to do it.
No, or she does it, and I say, "Go wash your hands." She already did.
Oh
So
yeah,
she's
yeah.
messing with me.
Yeah. That drives you nuts. Or yeah, you're interchanging sheets, bed
Yeah.
sheets a lot, or but I think we've come up with a good solution. I feel like with hands, you get these little, what are those called? The little alcohol swabs.
Hmm.
I feel like that's helped you a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely has. Definitely, I think there's a bunch of reasons why I am kind of living with it easier and or kind of like fighting against it. And two is, just taking care of my face, being, making sure it's not dehydrated, which unfortunately, it's inevitable that you have to get oil on it of some sort. Trying to keep my hair maintained. That obviously needs to be oily. A certain
And
amount
out
of
of your
oil
face.
is important. So, whether I like it or not, other parts of my anxiety have pushed against it to have some balance. But yeah.
Yeah, it'll get there.
Yeah.
With time, it'll get better. But I think my only kind of OCD or kind of phobia, it would be cleaning. Just making sure things are clean or not being able to have like messy things around me while I work. Just trying to focus. But like I said earlier, I'm not sure if that's because I'm trying to avoid what I'm supposed to be doing
I think it
and the
might
need I
be
need to clean.
maybe a little both,
Yeah.
but I think, just trying to maybe know that you're going to be doing this for a minute. So best to just get in the right mindset so you could just plow through it.
Yeah. And I think the last, oh no, did I just lose it? The last three I feel like are, or the next one is aggression, but I feel like goes in hand with the violent tantrums per se,
Yeah.
and depression and anxiety, and I think that's very obvious.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I have anxiety about a lot of things. But
I think one of your main ones recently that I'm noticing is social anxiety, which I've
yeah.
never really seen. I guess I've never noticed it as much as I am now. sometimes with work, or
Because
sometimes when we go out.
I'm not hanging out with a lot of people as much as I used to.
Yeah.
I'm not being forced into settings where I don't relate to anybody and I'm have to.
Yeah.
Ultimately, to find relatable factors takes experience. And if you don't consistently do that, you're not going to be as second nature to just do that. And I think also just becoming smarter is definitely something that has been very painful. It's not easy to try and learn. Uh, it's a process, but ultimately, when you do, you start looking at the world differently, start understanding the world a little bit differently. The world becomes a little bit smaller as you start to get older. You start to realize that people aren't as different as you once assumed that they were. Tendencies are not these random occurrences, but they are tendencies.
Right.
People, there isn't a billion personality traits. They're very, it's just, all the traits, you just don't know which one somebody has or somebody doesn't have. And the older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing and picking up on these things. And I'm not like your grandma. I'm not a bullshitter. I'll call it how it is. I'll say it how it is. I might not say it to their face, but I'll say it to you. And through experience of trial and errors of explaining certain things and seeing the amount of things that comes to fruition in terms of whether I was kind of on the ball or not, the average is that I'm pretty much on the ball a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I really take pride in, although I use it as a source of
Self-validation.
and comfort, knowing that you know this.
Like your feeling was right.
Your gut, the thing that your internal compass guided you into, I'm being very vague because obviously guided you in the right direction.
Right.
And although you couldn't prove it, it ended up turning out to be proved through new information that you've acquired throughout your experience with somebody or in a situation.
Yeah.
So I think that that's something I've never really experienced with either. And believe it or not, that's also, I take a lot of who I am as a relatability to other people. I know how which is interesting. I don't think I've ever really told you this. Subconsciously, I know how I'd react if I wasn't me and I was them. And that's how I can kind of get to that mindset too of like how they would or how they are reacting to me or why they would react to me is because I would feel very similar if I was in their shoes. So I'm even beknownst to me, I subconsciously play out that simulation in my head internally to ultimately get me to the reasoning why they would.
That's
ultimately.
a lot of thinking.
But I'm not even thinking it, which is even crazier.
Just
it's
coming
not,
natural?
It's just natural, like, reading somebody. And I think maybe all that experience and even more experience of just reading a room, it's just through however many years I've been alive, I've actually really refined that skill, a lot more refined than I even give myself credit for, weirdly enough. Yeah. Which is interesting. And a lot of it too is that as I get older, I'm definitely more, it comes with, I'm a lot more selective of who I want to talk to. If I see somebody isn't in the time in their life that I am in, or in the right mindset that I'm in, I'm not as emotionally inclined to kind of gravitate towards you. But that could be completely voided if I actually just get along with you.
Right.
On a, spiritual mind to mind level. Like if we just vibe, then it doesn't matter what you're into or, or what
Where
phase you're in your
at.
life. Like I'll vibe with you, but
Right.
but if I'm like just that little bit less of like bullshitting. I'm not gonna, if You know, I find
Yeah.
myself like more and more with you. Like, I don't even know what to say to them because it's not like I can bullshit as much. I just like, I guess maybe because I'm trying to like take on so much learning and trying to, you know, grow and get more finite in these certain fields that I'm trying to do. It's there's just so much computing power that I can't even role play that anymore. I'm just
Right.
like, cool. Can we, you know, what are we doing here? You
Yeah.
know, can we, you know, so, um, but yeah, I just do my best. Try and soak up as much information about anything and everything. Like right now, I don't know why, but I'm just so interested in recently like diseases and shit. Like mad cow disease in England, how it started.
I was having a conversation with Maya about that because you were kind of downloading me on information, and then on one of her last days of camp, we were walking and we were talking about that. It was just really funny, and I was like, I wonder if she's gonna talk about this at camp, like mad cow disease and how it happened and how cows are eating cows, and it's kind of like. She's like, humans were eating humans? And I was like, no, it's not that, but I mean, kind of like that, but with cows. And yeah, I was just picturing how she would have these conversations with her friends, or if they would bring that up with their parents and be like, where'd you hear from this? Like, but it's good. The more you know.
But it's a work in progress with being more social. I feel like as I continue down this road of enlightenment with my personal passions and ventures, it will ultimately lead me down a road of meeting a lot more new people and needing to refine that skill ultimately, which I'll trade it, right? You get better at one thing, you're able to do it more secondhand nature, the learning kind of stops in that sense. Another learning begins, enabling you to learn, you know, learn how to be social again in that setting. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Things can only get up.
yep. So maybe with that being said,
We'll
I
wrap
think
it
we'll
up.
bring it to a close. Yeah. But yeah, thanks again if you're tuning in this far into the video. Appreciate you.
Sticking through with us,
Yep.
even though we're very exhausted.
Yep. And if you have anything that you want to say, feel free to drop it in the comment section. And we'll see you next week.